Every school has that kid, right? The kid nobody talks to.
Am
the
I?
most Irish, Scottish something that's ever lived. What are you talking about?
We're good to go? Yeah. Do I need a clap to sync the audio in the video?
If it's easier for your editor, yeah.
All right, let's do a... And just like that, we're caught in the simulation.
Let's go.
Thank you for doing this with us, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, before I introduce our guest, I just want to address the three elephants in the room, and that's not a stab at you guys being obese under any circumstance. I just want you guys to make yourselves known. So can you just shout your name so we can hear you on audio, and then...
Yo, what's good? It's Luke Jarvis, rolling camera 2 over to Conor's left.
This is Killian Dunn. It's my first day with the GDP podcast, and I'm happy to be here.
And you're a great guy. And who do we have over here?
You got Gio Geronimo doing the engineering.
Your last name is Geronimo?
Yeah, that's,
So-
that's my real last name.
Dude, that's like a superhero name, man.
Thanks, man.
And on my right, camera left, I have Shawn Simmons, and I'm excited to have you here, man. We've all just been bumping Wayne the past like 4 days, trying to come prepared.
Thanks, man. It's I'm happy to talk about it. You know, no matter how many years passed since it's been aired.
Well, but it got a second life when you got picked up by Amazon, right? That's kind of what it seemed like.
It did. It they bought it. You know, you don't like to benefit from things like people getting sick, but we did benefit from the pandemic and the lack of production that was going on. And you know, it from what I understand, did well. It's one of those things. I think in the end, honestly, it felt like we had a shot. They were calling about like actors deals and like at getting a season 2 on Amazon. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. We haven't technically been not picked up. We haven't technically been canceled. But you get the hint after a while. It's been a while.
If they're interested.
Yeah. That they haven't come a calling in a while. But I think, you know, there's a real problem with these types of things where if they didn't send me, that's me. That's me. Classy.
Sounded
Phone
vulgar.
just went off. No, it was the trailer for the movie. We just looked up, the Boston movie.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, when studios, when networks don't actually make the show and they take it from somewhere else, there's a real lack of kind of like ownership that they feel for a thing. You know, they want to put the stuff on they had developed all along. So, you know, Cobra Kai is one of those, you know, great show. Few things that it's like you can't deny the popularity of that. I mean, that IP, you know, internationally, it's a huge thing, and it's a great show, and, you know, you couldn't deny those numbers.
So that was originally on YouTube Premiums, then it got picked up by Amazon?
Yeah, YouTube Premium was us, Cobra Kai. There was a Jordan Peele show. Weird City. And a bunch of other smaller things that they kind of took a swing at things, and I think in the end realized that, like, oh, we're a creator-based platform.
Mm-hmm.
This whole making it a TV network thing isn't, you know, really our gig. We should keep it these kids who make us things for $7, and, you know, we make millions.
And so when you were pitching Wayne around, did they come to you first being like, hey, we're YouTube, we're creating original content now, we want to give your show a shot? Or
No, I wrote that script. I had the idea first. I had the idea because I had a scene in my head that was based off of a real thing that happened. And that's the scene, the opening that you guys know, with the throwing the rock, the ice through the window. In Brockton, when I was about 8 years old and too young to do anything about it, you know, some kid was getting his ass kicked by like 6 kids. I forget how many. 6 older kids. And when they were done beating his ass, tired or whatever it was, they started to walk away, and he stood up and he picked up a rock and he threw it at him, and he got beat up again. So like that never left me, because in towns like that, you know, it's filled with kids that are like, either I don't have a mom or a dad or both. You know, you're not taking my fucking pride too. You know what I mean? You can swear?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all good, man. Fuck.
So you're not. You're all good. Fuck. You're not taking my pride too. So that was just one of those things I remember about the people back home more than anything. It's like, you're not. You can take anything but my pride.
So before we move on, can we just peel it all the way back? One, can you just tell everyone who you are, and then can we describe where you come from?
Yeah, my name is Shawn Simmons. I'm from Brockton, Massachusetts. You guys know. I mean, what was your... When you were young and you heard Brockton?
Well, surprisingly, on this podcast specifically over the past 4 years, I've had more artists from Brockton than any other place on the planet. And I was telling you on the phone, Brockton has a very prevalent hip-hop scene right now. There's a group called Van Buren Records. There's a studio there that, I don't know if you're familiar, there's a studio there called so the Sound Lab. Are you familiar?
No.
Where they just break a lot of artists out of there. And know who's also from there? And I don't know if you know him, but are you familiar with Dave Wedge?
Yeah, he's an author, right?
Yeah, so he was the lead beat reporter for the Herald. And then he was on the front lines for when the Boston bombing happened. So he was like 45 and he was like, fuck it, I'm in a unique position to write a book. So he wrote a book on the Boston bombing, which later got picked up and turned into Patriots Day.
We had a little interaction on Twitter, and then you just reminded me I'm supposed to read his latest book.
You guys would love each other.
Well, listen, I'm looking for that like true life story to write about, Boston history, and he's always working in that area of crime, and so I now have to go back and try to figure out what that book was.
And he loves the energy of Brockton being like scrappy, like city of Rocky Marciano.
Yeah, man. I mean, Marvin Hagler, Rocky Marciano.
Every dude from Brockton talks about Marvin Hagler being from Brockton.
One of my favorite fighter of all time, maybe by far.
Really?
Even if he wasn't from Brockton. But yeah, I mean, like it's funny when I met people out here, having been fresh to LA, that were from Massachusetts. The minute you said like, yeah, I'm from Brockton, they had this like, oh, how's that? But I don't know. It's changed, right? I mean, I get the sense that it's changed. It's not as... We used to fight every weekend. I had a party once. The only party I ever had. You don't have parties when you have my dad. My dad, I used to watch fight on the hockey rink at AZF skating rink behind the high school at Midnight League. You don't have parties because he will do the same thing he did to that fucking guy on the rink to you. But I dare to have one. And of course, I mean, it lasted 45 minutes before this person told that person, this person, no matter how hard you try, only us, don't tell anybody. 40 people were there. The wrong groups of people were there with each other, and there was a brawl, a full-on brawl. My front fence was completely obliterated. I lived on a fairly main drag, too. It was Torrey Street, which was, it was not a quiet street, but it was the middle of the night, and pieces of my fence were in the street. Kids were fighting. There was a point where cops pulled up, and the dogs didn't even stop the kids from fighting. Like, the dogs were nipping at heels and biting at heels, and they kept fighting. So, yeah, my dad, they're at the Cape. They went to the Cape for the weekend. My dad caught wind. They came home. I'd clean that house up, but it didn't matter. Like, obviously the neighbors were, were reporting back. And
so was it just was it a brawl over territory?
It was just,
like, I'm pissed.
How many fights at school just started with some tension, like, you talk shit about me, or you said that thing, or it was about nothing. It was about, like, two guys that were, sometimes it honestly felt like people were just supposed to fight at some point. I remember people telling me, you got to fight Brian Drukas. I'm like, why am I fighting Brian Drukas? And they're like, because I think you could take him. I was like, so? Like, so like fights didn't start for any reason most of the time. It was, we used to go to this place, The Rock, which was a big rock in the middle of the woods. People would fight there. And then Burger King parking lot, where a lot of brawls happened. But it became like who's fighting this Friday kind of deal. You know what I mean? So people fought. I think in towns like that, which I always call them like urban hillbillies, you know, like it's just because it's the
Degenerates.
city. Yeah, just because it's the city doesn't mean they're not like truck people. You know what I mean?
Sophisticated. Yeah.
Brockton's filled with guys that you could be like, oh, that guy, if I didn't hear his accent, I'd think he was from Alabama.
Oh,
You know what I
really?
mean? Yeah. I mean, those guys, like, there's a lot of those guys that are like, New England's still woods and shit. You know what I mean? Like, still got the woods, so. Yeah, and then you'd show up to fights and there'd be, you know, I was thinking about one the other day where someone was like, yeah, I brought my dad just to make sure nothing goes down. And then the dad fights, you know, like that type of thing. So that was very much a part of our culture all the time. I mean, as you can see in my show, it very much is people who are just like so quick to throw down. But
Now, what did your parents do?
my father, he ended up he worked for the state for the many years at the end of his life. He was like, I don't know what they called it, park supervisor.
Cool.
They have a beautiful park in Easton. He finally ended up at, which I don't know if you guys know that one. There's like a big mansion on Ames Mansion or something.
When we've been location scouting for a new film in Massachusetts, and I was sending you mansions. Is that one of them?
I think Knives Out and Ghostbusters filmed there. So
Okay.
maybe it might be a locations place.
Okay, cool.
He luckily worked at he just had to put up with what he thought were the snobby rich people.
In Easton.
Yeah, because in Easton was nice, you know, and it'd be like, these fucking bitches. They make me fucking clean up after their dogs. You know, it's just, and they treat me like shit. But yeah, he got lucky there. He was working at like AZF skating rink for years because that's state owned. They didn't privatize those things. And I got a job off of him working at the rink because there was a pool next door, which was the best job I ever had, which was just watch the pool. So no one breaks in the middle of the night. So I'd sleep there. They didn't know I was sleeping. I had a little like roll up mattress in the back of my car. I'd pull up. I'd like draw for a while, talk on the phone, and then fall asleep. So no one would like jump the fence and die, you know. It sounds like the job out of a Tom Waits song. Like the guy who's like just sits there and watches the pool overnight.
Sounds like the best job ever, man.
Yeah, you'd have friends up there and have fun, but then there'd be the occasional like,
Drowning.
well, shh, to cover it up because I fucked up. No, it was like, you know, my dad, when it was off and on with jobs when we were kids, it's, you know, went from working at the steel mill, you know, there was a place called Turner Steel, which he fucking hated. He worked for most of his life, like bending rebar in the middle of the winter outside in the sweltering humid heat. My mother, you know, they had 3 kids by the time they were 22.
Wow.
So different. You
Different
know what I mean?
life.
Different. So she didn't go to college till she was late 30s and finally made her life better.
Cool.
My father was making like 40 grand a year until, you know, 15 years ago. 40 grand.
And was your mom creative, or were you always just a little special?
You're way saying that. My mother did say, you should be on the radio. I didn't take that as an insult till later. I was like, oh, because I have a pit bull face. No, she was creative. She was an artist growing up. They definitely were. When you start at the bottom, anything's better. You know, they never had much. They gave us a great life, but we didn't know how bad we had it at times. We had it real bad at times. Holes in the shoes and not being able to afford new shoes. You know, my mom learned to cut hair real quick, you know, because we were never going to be able to pay for haircuts, that type of poor. Government cheese blocks this big. Chipping the cheese, pulling out of the fridge and chipping cheese off of it into day-old English muffins type of poor. But she was really creative, did graphic arts later in life, made her life better. We had kind of a step up in life when she did that. But, you know, before that, luckily we didn't know it was that bad, you know. Like when
That was just life.
Yeah, it's just life. We didn't know that we didn't know if we're going to eat on the weekends certain times. They don't like me talking about this that much, but, you know. It's the truth of the show. A lot of the stuff you see in the show. My dad always talking about spending money. That dad in that show talks about I realize I'm like, Jesus Christ. All this Dell's dad talks about is don't spend that money. Why are you spending my money? That's too expensive, you know. That was my dad, definitely. You grew up. You're gonna catch these stomach growls on.
I haven't heard a thing.
Oh, okay, good.
Are you hungry?
Oh, I'm intermittent fasting.
Sean, as am I.
I lost 30 pounds in the last
Good for you, man.
3 months.
It's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah,
You feel energized?
I'm starving.
Yeah,
you know,
dude.
But my brain doesn't seem. I keep thinking my brain's gonna be like from
No,
not
no,
eating.
you're
but
sharper
yeah, I think
because your insulin levels baseline.
I definitely it only takes doing this once to go. Oh, sugar just murders you.
Sugar is the devil, brother, but it's the best.
Yeah, I'm stupid from it. I was stupid from it. My face is this puffy because of sugar. Like once I do a diet like this, my
I
face
know.
just goes whoop. But anyway, we're off track.
It's those dopamine hits, man. Now, question. So, I think we were talking about this on the phone a little bit. So, you're growing up in Brockton. When do you get an inkling, like, I would like to maybe write for TV or film? Because there's no way you were growing up around anyone who was doing it.
Yeah, I grew up. All the kids I grew up with, were skaters, BMX bike kids, punk, hardcore. That always, I think, leans to, being attracted to things that are different, creative things, art. We hung around with a lot of kids in the art room, as they say. So there was we were around that kind of different cast of people in high school. We were definitely not none of us played sports. So that, and my mother was creative, so there was a little bit of that. That stuff appealed to me more than anything, and comedy mostly.
What specifically?
My personality definitely, I think, I had like a Adonis best friend. Okay.
What do you mean, just jacked?
He turned out to be 6'3", Norwegian. He didn't turn out to be Norwegian. It was a surprise when he was 18. But he was a Norwegian kid. He it slowly developed in him. Oh my God! He's
Looked at himself in
transforming.
his mirror.
Yeah,
I'm Norwegian.
Norwegian. His name was Evan Eaton. He was my best friend from down the street. And when you're little, you're little. That's your friend. He's right there down the street, and that's who you're going to be friends with. And he just turned into the most gorgeous kid on earth. Okay,
Got all the shorties.
right. And I was the opposite of that. I was always heavy set and had a face like a pit bull and built like a D battery, and just I had to stand next to him.
But you had the heart of a lion.
But here's the thing. His personality didn't develop. You know what I mean?
Fuck that guy.
He didn't have to. It didn't have to.
Yeah.
He had his looks. He could be the dumbest fucking goof on the planet. He had a thing too where he wouldn't go out places without me because I was the entertainment. If they had a friend, I would talk for him.
Mm-hmm.
There's always, he'd bring me places to kind of oh, would you be there and make sure you keep up the conversation? So I just I had to develop jokes to get attention, and I was fucking falling down staircases for fun, for jokes, hurting myself for humor. I grew up in that Chris Farley era, so I was falling down staircases, and I had to develop
Real slapstick comedy.
I loved it. I mean, I grew up there in Sandler and all that shit. So I loved loud. Wayne is loud as fuck.
It is.
As much drama as it has, as much quiet as it can have, it's everyone from Boston is so fucking loud.
Very brash.
Yeah.
Speaking of Chris Farley era, have you ever seen Almost Heroes?
It's the Explorer one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen it? So funny, dude. So ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that's my shit, dude. I love Holway.
So you've seen Almost Heroes?
Of course.
You know that part where they're dragging him out, he's a prisoner, and they're dragging him to the noose, and the woman's like, I hope Satan himself burns the flesh off your miserable bones. And he's like, good God, lady. I watch that on repeat twice a week, dude. It's hilarious.
Tommy Boy was that movie
Yeah.
for me. That I was falling out of the seat in the theater laughing so hard.
Now,
young.
so those were the movies you were growing up on.
Yeah, it's.
Waterboy.
I loved like when I first got to see Saturday Night Live. It was definitely right before. I mean, John Lovitz. I remember him being. Was that West Junior High? I was in junior high, and I saw like John Lovitz. Billy Crystal was still hanging around. You Look Marvelous was a thing, I think, at the time. I remember that. But that was right before all the Chris Rock, Adam Sandler, David Spade, Chris Farley.
That era.
Those guys. And
Norm Macdonald too, yeah.
yeah, I just loved stupid, loud shit. So it's like Adam Sandler doing the dumbest thing in the world, Opera Man, was the funniest shit to me in the world. And like now, I think those people, carried on the tradition of, they had those sketches that came on at like, right before 1 o'clock when the show ended. What time was that? 11:30, 12, 1? Yeah, right before 1 o'clock. They'd always put the weird sketches, and they still do that. And so Will Forte became like my next favorite. Tracy Morgan, like they always put those sketches at the end that were so fucking weird.
I could see you loving the MacGruber series. Did you watch it?
Yes.
So good. I didn't act her on the show. And did you see it? It was really clever. And to be honest, when I saw Wayne, it reminded me of that series because it was so authentic, dude. Like, your series was incredibly authentic. The way you edited, I don't know, were you heavy in the edit room, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
So, like, just having titles hit out of nowhere. Like, there was a shot where you had a tracking shot in on a facial expression, and you used, like, a whoosh sound effect on the way in, and then you did a freeze frame. You know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about Dell close-up in the
It's
train?
in on the female character.
Yeah.
It was a very clever and very distinct, like, okay, I understand the director's voice. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, the titles thing, the tone, there's a lot of tone that comes from those choices. Definitely. That you didn't see in a lot of stuff at the time. I think, surprisingly, TV moves so fast that there's a lot more stuff like it. But that being said, like, I wrote that Wayne titles thing into the script. I said, like, Wayne hits the screen like 1,000-pound stamp or something like that. And Full Metal, like the metal guitar sound was definitely a thing. I said, if this guy has a sound, it's Metallica.
A stab.
Yeah. Specifically late 70s, 80s thrash metal. Because there's nothing more, in my head, more kind of ridiculously extreme. And that was the whole point. Like, Wayne is ridiculously extreme, So, that was definitely a choice. Like, I think everything that Ian McDonald is responsible. He's the director of the first episode. And unfortunately, he couldn't be on the rest of the series because he went off to do great shit. But he's the one who did that flair of, we zoomed in on her face. I think he put the sound of a train in the background. And so it feels like a whoosh. But it basically sits on her face, and the title of the episode was Get Some Then. She's like, well, get some then. Money or whatever to buy the cookies. So
similar, there's the shot where he gets kidnapped by that, like, redneck near the barn. And then you have this weird character hit with the text hit. And I was like, that's so genius to introduce a character. It's the most blatant way to do it. What's the dude's name?
Oh.
He's in the barn with his sister or something, or it's his girlfriend.
Lee fucking Murray.
Yeah. It's fucking smart directing, man.
Yeah, that, we did a lot less as the show progressed. We did a lot less of that stuff because I felt like as the drama of the whole thing kind of started to build and we were going less with their absurdist comedy and more like trying to get people absorbed into the like culmination of drama after we've gotten to know these characters. We kind of, you lean off of that stuff a little bit, but I do like, now that you're bringing it up, I'm like, oh, we did a lot of that fun stuff at the beginning when we're introducing people. And it's a quick way to do those things that are like, let's introduce this fucking guy's extreme. And it was like Lee fucking Murray and Wayne kind of both had that thing going on where he smashed the titles in front of him. And that's, I mean, it's the heightened aspect of the show a little bit that made it a little bit more than just kind of like a dramedy,
Yeah, but I mean, Killian and Luke, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I I love watching stuff where you can actually feel like the creator is making an original choice. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's why people like Quentin Tarantino, too, is because you can feel his voice and you can feel him shape the script. Would you agree with this series?
Dude, 100%. I know I'm not Mike, so I'll make this quick. But yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's kind of out of style. Like, it has been more dramedy stuff recently, more kind of naturalistic. And I'm with you, Connor. I want the storyteller pointing at things and telling me, check this out. Isn't this cool? Let's have this moment. And that was something that I really appreciated about the show. It felt like sort of like a throwback to Tarantino, but also just super fresh because we've sort of been trained with TV. It's streaming. It's endless. It's like scene after scene of kind of people have a conversation and then they go over here and have a conversation. And Wayne just had a different energy where it was like, let's have this cool thing. Like, I'm going to show you this. I'm going to do these push-ins. I'm going to have this like shifting energy.
Just, you didn't take yourself too serious, which was awesome.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things going on, which is like, as I think about it in hindsight, like, and try to figure out what
worked?
do,
Okay.
or what instinctively comes out of me when I make something. And there always has to be a good reason every time you make a choice like that. That Wayne stamp with the metal music, it's all about him being extreme. And I just wrote a pilot for Endeavor Content that is kind of like, a very weird version of Taken, I guess you could say.
Nice.
I'm not, but it, there's titles that are basically like, something's about to happen at the end of this episode that feels so different from the beginning of the episode that I said that's going to be a problem for some people. That's going to be like, oh, we didn't think it was this show. We thought it was this show because it starts off quiet. It's about a woman kind of staring into the abyss after she drops her daughter, her only family, off at college and realizes, who am I? Like, I've spent 17 years out of the military dedicating my life entirely. Even my job is so my daughter could have something. And when you drop that daughter off, I dropped my son off at preschool for the first real day. Like, I was there with him a couple hours for like a week, and then you have to kind of say goodbye. And I was crying so hard in the fucking car that I had to pull over on the side of the road and stop driving because I thought I'd crash into a tree and sob.
Why was it so emotional?
You'll get it. You'll get it eventually if you decide to have kids. I mean, I took care of that kid every waking second. I was lucky enough to like write and take care of him, and my kids have never had a babysitter in 15 years. My kids.
Okay, so wait. This was a while ago with the son in preschool.
This was a while ago.
I was like, your son's not 15 going to preschool.
No.
Okay.
This was a while ago, but I also had a moment which kind of spawned this, where I dropped him off on a field trip when he was 14. He went off to like New York for like 9 days. Same thing happened. Me and my wife went into different rooms and cried. We're insane. I see how you're looking at me. But we like, it's, you're always like, so someone's not going to take care of him the way they need to be taken care of. And what if he's scared or really, it's fucked up, man. But the kids were ruining that fucking kid. He's ruined. Like, he's going to go off in the world, like, fucking doing all the things he should have learned not to do at 4 years old. He's going to be sticking his fucking forks in light sockets and shit. Because we never let him learn to do anything. We're like, no, I got your sandwich. No, I know. Like, I don't know if that kid can cook a piece of chicken. He's 15. You know what I mean? Like, we keep going. We got to teach him to cook him a piece of chicken.
You got to send him off in the world and say, it's been a good ride, brother.
Yeah. God, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be seriously like the bird just falling out and hitting the ground. That's it. That's it. It's
Squash.
It's not let him free. It's like, where were we?
Rewinding.
The choices about
directorial choices.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have show running's a little different. Directors don't like to hear it, but show running's different with TV because you're, in a lot of cases, and they're trying to change this a lot of times, but you're kind of co-directing everything. And you're the final edit, and you're the final, which isn't the case of the movies. And so those directorial choices, like, the Wayne thing were up to me as showrunner. You know, I ran the room, I ran all the writers, and then I, you know, it was the last voice in editing. You know, the directors would do their cut, and sometimes those was, you know, great. But a lot of times I had to make sure, you know, that voice thing that you're talking about is in there. So editing had a lot to do with it, like you're saying. Like, I think you made me think of Edgar Wright. You know, like he does a lot of stuff that I really
Very similar.
love.
I was gonna say Adam McKay does it a lot too.
He does a lot in a different way. He's but he is. I wonder if all these people have ADHD.
I certainly do. Do you?
Yeah,
Big time.
severe. So
It's awesome.
I never trust, as much as I write 6-page scenes, which people tell you not to write because I love dialogue and I like bouncy dialogue and I like. It still like has to be crackerjack fireworks because I have ADHD and I get bored so easily that if I'm not seeing vroom and names coming up and dialogue that's really funny, or at least, you know, I started seeing independent movies in the 90s and I was like, holy shit, man, you can have a movie with just 2 people talking for this long? Like, but like with me making stuff, I have to make it so you are so engaged by people just being strange, weird, you know, or things being very intense.
I think it feels that way for sure. It's super stimulating show. Now, it surprises me that you say you have ADHD because that's the one reason I hate writing. I'm going to send you my film after this, and you're going to see it, and you're going to be like, okay, this dude knows what he's doing producing for sure, but writing is not his forte. Because I have never been able to sit down and just boom, 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 boom.
It's hard. I mean, I have to be so inspired.
But you have to like it. You must like it, obviously.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like, do you?
it's a complicated relationship. I mean, it's again, there's truth to that whole terrifying, you know, blank page, you know. But this is how I tend to do things. I tend to, like with Wayne, that first scene. I thought about that first scene. It might not be the way everybody does things, but I thought about that first scene. That scene made me laugh. It was very character defining. That's what you want from an opening scene. Get attention. Tell me about the character in one way, and then him throwing through the rock through the thing after he's been beaten up. You know who he is. You know what I mean? I tend to like think of opening scenes, and I might think of a lot of them, but one of them will catch me where I'm like, okay, this is about something. And so I thought of that scene in Wayne, and then didn't know what the show was, and then later said, oh wait, Dirty Harry in high school.
Yeah, I read
And that
this.
made me laugh. And then I said, John Wick Jr. as done by John Hughes or Richard Linklater. You know, and that made me laugh. And I said, okay, well, let's do what revenge element is in there or what justice, you know, element is in there. And I always liked the like Southern novels I write where there was a piece of inheritance that someone was looking for and went to get it. The whole journey is them going to find something.
I was going to say the road trip structure must be a good parameter to work within. Because it's like, all right, I got to get my characters from point A to point B. And then all this crazy shit happens in between. It's a journey film.
Yeah, the intensity of 2 people who don't know each other on a journey together is always appealing because it's the easiest way to write, you know, when the characters don't know each other, it's an easy way of people telling each other about themselves. Which, if you're writing a show about 2 characters who know each other, there's a lot of shit they won't talk about. They already know. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of intensity when you throw 2 people together on a journey like that. So that is going to appeal to me because I like everything like electric on the surface and loud. You know, it's always going to be bumpy immediately. 2 people, especially with personalities like that. I like that stuff. I throwing 2 new fresh people together on a tense road trip is, I mean, I watched Due Date the other, that Zach Galifianakis Robert Downey Jr. movie. I was laughing my head off. That the intensity of those 2 guys together obviously is something that's going to appeal to me.
Name the best road trip movie of all time. 3,
Before Sunset.
2. I've never seen that. What is that?
It's different from what I'm talking about, but that's Before Sunset and The Apartment are my 2 favorite movies.
Really?
Raiders of the Lost Ark coming in 3rd.
See, that's what I was looking for you beforehand when I said, like, was there a moment? Everyone always says, like, it was Indiana Jones or Star Wars, like, changed their perception on what they wanted to do in life. I mean, I'm sure Star Wars is probably a little too old for you.
It's weird. I never think about it that way. I think about it like I grew up. My father showing me a lot of. I think like the revenge thrillers that Wayne became, and then when I was young, like a lot of my father's favorite movie, and this will tell you he never had to have a childhood because it was kind of traumatic, and then he had a kid at 18, never got to be a kid, so everything he liked from there on was child. All the child shit. Like he wanted to go to Disneyland, couldn't afford it our whole life. That's where he wanted to go. He wanted to play hockey. And he watched movies that like a 15-year-old likes. So his favorite movie growing up, he was an adult. His favorite movie was Conan the Barbarian.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, and that's why it's such a big influence in Wayne. And it is a great movie, but it was like a funny thing for like to tell people your dad's favorite movie is Conan the Barbarian. Yeah. You know, but he loves action shit, and he was showing me movies like that. So there was that, but then I graduated into I lived during the birth of this blockbuster in Spielberg and the wonder of that. He does a lot of those push-ins like with camera and everything that I love, the swooshes and things showing wonder and emotion.
The long 1 minute dolly shots.
Yeah, he's, you know. Have you watched Munich?
I have not. It's a good one.
I was watching the camera work in that the other day, and it's just it's almost like it's stunning. The camera tricks they do in that movie that are just beautiful.
Better than Baby Driver?
Yes.
Really?
Baby Driver's great, man.
Tons of whip pans in Baby Driver.
This is like you can't like Spielberg does shit like the beginning of that his musical. Somebody say the name of it. West Side Story. Just have you watched any of it? I don't like musicals.
Nor do I.
I like
the ADHD thing, you know.
And I like Sing Street, which I want musicals that are like, oh, they're singing because that's real life, and they play. He's a busker, and like I don't like those. We're gonna start singing in the middle of the street for no fucking reason. Things like that's just not for me. But just watch the first 10 minutes of West Side Story, which is I watched about half of it. Like the camera work, you can't fucking believe it. Like you watch it and you go like, oh my God, there are 50 people in the shot, and this camera is executing shit that you can't believe. Like the amount of setup and the amount of planning that had to go into that opening segment is mind-blowing. And just as someone who's probably going to hopefully direct soon, like it was almost intimidating. You're like, how does anybody ever get there? You know what I mean? I like smaller movies and stuff, so it won't be the case. But yeah, so Spielberg and that stuff and Indiana Jones, like my family became like the Indiana Jones family. Like it was our favorite thing in the world. I grew up during like, you know, a time where we had Blockbuster videos coming home. So I had a little movie club with my friends and horror movies. And we started watching like, you started getting Nightmare on Elm Street and all these horror movies. And then we started digging deep and we got into like the really cheap, like trauma films, like Toxic Avenger, Redneck Zombies, all that shit, because we wanted to laugh at them as much as with them. And then we saw Evil Dead 2, and that changed our fucking life.
I've never seen Evil Dead 2.
Oh my God.
Have
you
you,
want to
Killian?
talk about camera?
I'm a big fan of Evil Dead.
Yeah?
Yeah, you see the Evil Dead in the new multiverse movie. But Sam Raimi in that movie, like, you want to talk about camera work, like, really, really defining a movie. You always know it's Raimi. Like, when you see it in Doctor Strange, you're like, oh, that's Evil Dead shit that he's doing. But Evil Dead was, like, the first movie I saw that was, like, Wayne is funny and you know, that movie's kind of really funny and scary. It was still scary and weird, but it was also like making fun of itself, and it was kind of quirky in a way that I was like, oh, you can bang genres together like this in this way, and so it changed my life. I mean, that movie club turned into watching Evil Dead every weekend.
Real deal cinephile.
For the length of our relationship, my friend's relationship was like, oh, we're just watching this until those relationships ended, and we did. Like, Evil Dead 2 was, I can't think, like, that's in there.
Whatever happened to the Adonis character in your life? Is he still around?
Who?
Is it Evan Eaton?
Evan Eaton.
Yeah.
He went to Florida.
But he's been married 10 times.
Well, Yeah, I mean, the last time I talked to him, he said he was on a jet.
Oh, so he's worth millions.
Yeah, but I think, he's never going to listen to this. I don't think he listens to podcasts. But I haven't really spoken to him a lot. Like, we kind of like, he didn't show up to my wedding, and I was like, oh, is this, we're we weren't speaking that much. He was in Florida. We were just talking once a year or something, and then he was like, and I talked to him, and he was like, yeah, I'm dating this woman. She's much older than me, and I'm on a private jet. And I was like, that makes sense.
Okay.
She has money.
Got it.
He has a huge dick.
I'm sure.
This is.
You've seen it.
Yeah, I have. Unfortunately, cursed me for life.
Let me ask you a question.
Let's
real
get
quick,
back to
Shawn.
questions with the guy with the regular sized penis. If you're into guys who are always pulling up their pants and have a regular sized penis, I'm your guy.
I'm glad you're here. I kind of want to talk about your come up a little bit because let me tell you my perspective. Both Luke and I made separate movies in Boston, distributed them in Boston. I put my movie in theaters. We both put it on streaming services. Now, you shift to LA originally. How do you get started working right away? And from what Luke was telling me is he read an interview with you where you were like, dude, I was going to give the fuck up before Wayne was made. Like, there was moments where, like, you were like, I'm totally done with career-wise. Like, I'm putting my family through hell.
I moved out here. I went to Emerson College. They had a habit of, and still have a habit of, basically shipping kids by the dozen after the end of every school year out to LA. I was one of those people, and Emerson was easier to get into when I went there. I wasn't a great student. I did a year of community college and got my grades up and realized ADHD had crippled me, and I was actually slowing down as an adult. You slow down, that's what I'm hoping happens for my son, and you start to patience see more clearly. And got my grades up. Went to Emerson, studied writing, publishing, literature. Knew I wanted to do comedy, but had stage fright. Realized, like, I did stand up a couple times, threw up before and after each time.
Wow.
Realized I couldn't do it because Boston cursed me. Because everybody's like, if you're fucking not funny and try to be, they will fucking destroy you. They will destroy you. So trying to like be funny and expected to be funny was not a great combo for me. I was like, what if I'm not? Then everyone's gonna fucking destroy me. So I didn't have the balls. And then graduated, came out here. I started doing
Right away.
Yeah, I went to Paramount. Was given tours. They had a page system where you'd do tours and you'd also do little jobs. You'd do. There was a lot of multi-camera sitcoms at the time. You'd end up working those as pages, like helping the audience get in and all this.
So you were giving tours to visitors around the studio and then also PAing.
It's basically like PAing. It's paging, and then I got a PA gig.
So you were 22.
I was a little. I think it was because they didn't take all my credits when I transferred. It was like 5 years. Yeah, about that.
Okay.
23 maybe. Yeah.
Where are you living in LA at the time?
Living over in West Hollywood, Formosa and Fountain, over by Sunset. We had a strip joint up the corner, and at night, people, you'd have some drugged out girls and people like rolling on your lawn, like in 3 a.m. You're like, why is there screaming outside?
You're reminiscing about this admirably, though. So
Yes.
like you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did. Listen,
You like the chaos.
it wasn't, if you're from anywhere else, maybe but I came out here and I was used to kind of having, bars in my window.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it was, and then I go there now. You get soft, man. I live in the valley. You get soft, and then you come back and you're like, I would never live here again. Are you fucking kidding me?
The chaos
But,
kingdom.
yeah. I had a guy who lived in the apartment that was connected to mine behind me. I told my son this the other day. I go, do you want to know how good you have it? When I was there, I had a guy who was selling drugs, who lived in the apartment connected to mine, so we shared a wall, and I heard shit on the other side. And he had his face fully tattooed like a lizard.
Holy shit.
My son's like, what?
Oh my god.
It was like a Marvel villain, like living behind me.
Selling dope.
Except he's really poor. He's like not a very successful Marvel villain, but he had a lizard face. But yeah, that was listen, it felt normal at the time. Felt okay at the time. Luckily, I'm from Brockton, and I wasn't too fucking snotty at the time. Not snotty, are you, Simmons? And then and I was paging, and then I got PA jobs. PA jobs is always like it's the routine,
Work
rite
your
of
way up,
passage
yeah.
into. I worked in a show called Becker, which was a Ted Danson show. My wife, who I met, she was working Frasier at the time, on that same lot. But we used to get passed around for shows, and then I finally got the PA gigs, and I started writing. And one of the people I worked with at the time was one of the writers on Becker, surprisingly enough.
This was always the goal, though, was to be a writer.
I started to figure that out
'Kay.
pretty quickly because I would write comedy bits and I would write sketches. I'm more of a long form guy. Like, I never quite figured out the art of the sketch. I would write things I thought were sketches that weren't. And then, I was a fat TV kid. So, like, working sitcoms was the right place for me. And I got let in the... Dave Hackle was the creator of the show, and he let me in the room a couple times, and I pitched jokes, and they put them in the show. And I dared pitch jokes, which was ballsy. I look back now, I'm so shy. The biggest problem I had was not asking people for help. And you kind of got to bite the bullet and do it. Like, I was shy. Like, Boston, you don't ask people for help.
It's a pride thing.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I had a really hard time with that. So I pitched jokes that day, got in, and gave me confidence. I said, I'm going to start trying to figure out how to write scripts. And I had scripts coming through the door every day on that show. So I would look at the changes they made and the joke changes they made and saw them change on stage. And I learned how to do it there a bit. And then I became the assistant to a guy named Jake Hogan, who had won an Emmy for Frasier. He was one of the original writers in The Simpsons for 5 years during those great first 5 years. A really funny guy and dear friend, and a mentor to me. Like, he really helped me build my confidence on his shows. And then, I wrote get this, a Sex and the City spec. Wrote a Sex and the City
Where do you
spec.
get the right to do something like that? How
Back
do you
then-
know what it's like to be like a young 28-year-old in
Hey,
New
man.
York City having sex with men?
I was watching that show with my wife,
Really?
got into it, I think you can get into just about anything.
It's
if you
actually a
watch
great
it.
show.
Yeah.
So did the spec work?
Yeah. I mean, I had 3 agents call me.
Nice.
They said, you need another one. They all said the same thing. You needed 2. You all wrote someone else's show back then. You didn't write original shit. They told you never to write original shit. And this was in 2000s, 2000.
So how old are you?
Oh, God. I don't know. How old is I? I'm 49 years old.
2022, so you're 27.
Yeah, I don't do math. I don't know. I asked my wife how long we've been married the other day.
So 22 to 27. So you're like really just hustling on shows for 5 years before anything happens.
Yeah. It was PAs, doing that work. And then I wrote 2 specs. I wrote a Curb after that.
Nice.
And that got me... Bill Diamond was the reason. Bill Diamond was a writer. He's been in a million things. Old school guy. He was nice enough. I was sitting as an assistant at Universal Studios. I decided I was going to be assistant to all these executives. I was assistant to Jake Hogan, who was a writer. He had like a huge deal at one point. I worked for him for 2 years. He just let me come into work and write. I got a paycheck. I do a few things for him here and there, but barely anything. And then I would write all day. And then, or nothing, do nothing all day. I should say more of that than writing. But, and then one day I jumped to the executive, the creative executive who had hired him, to her desk, and she brought me, I was her assistant in development and current at Warner Brothers, Universal, Studios USA. She brought me around, and I got to see now I was seeing shows. There was she'd cover like 10 shows, and I'd have all these scripts coming in. I'd be in the notes calls, and I'd be learning like what not to do, what character drive, always think in your head every scene, what do they want? What are they doing to get it? What do they want? What are they doing to get it? And you'll see that in Wayne. Like, that whole script is like, girl comes to the door, then he needs money for those things. And he goes, one needs an nunchucks to sell the thing to get the girl. Then it goes there, and I learned all those basic, things at a desk at an assistant job for an executive, which isn't the normal way in. But I was lucky to do it. And then I had a script on my desk. And that writer, Bill Diamond, saw that script on my desk and he flipped it over. He had the balls to kind of just take my script and flipped it over. And he said, "You write?" And I said, "Yeah." And I couldn't ask anybody for help again. Like, that was my biggest problem. And he goes, "I'm going to read this." And I couldn't believe it. I was like, "Okay." I was scared and excited all at the same time. And then he called me that night and he goes, "I'm going to send this to my agent." And I was like, "Holy shit, I guess I can write good enough."
Wow.
You know? And he sent that curb, and I met with him, and then I met with Gersh, and then I met with a few other people. Like, once people know that
you got represented, yeah.
someone wants you, other people want you, and signed, and I've been with 3 agents since then. And then it was the hard road of getting staffed. I got staffed on a show, and I had a great time my first show. I was on a bunch of shows for years.
So hold up, sorry to cut you off.
No,
So
please cut me off.
you so you get signed, you write the specs. Now your agent goes around town and says, "Hey, I represent this super talented writer. You should hire him for your staff."
Right.
That's how it works.
They read you.
Got it.
You realize it's so much more complicated than that. It's like half the time it's like people already know people.
Politics,
people work
yeah,
with
yeah.
People, it's your chances of actually being that person they don't know that comes in and they read your script and are wowed by it and you have a great meeting. Realize how hard it is. Like, it was so hard. And so I wrote in a bunch of like shows that were canceled in 13 episodes that no one ever knew about. And then kid shows, because kid shows were like 24 episodes back then. Like, iCarly was like, I didn't work on that, but like, just naming one you probably know. Those shows were like 24 episodes. And when you have a kid coming, you were on that show for like a year and a half every season.
Mm-hmm.
And the money's good.
What kid shows did you work on?
I worked in a show called Kirby Buckets, which was a Disney XD show.
Nice.
That the guy from Cobra Kai starred in. Bucket and Skinner, I have all these weird name shows. Bucket and Skinner, Nickelodeon. Wendell and Vinny was a show I was on with Jerry Trainer from iCarly. Like, all these, but again, a bunch of shows that disappeared after one season. Again, I will say, writing children's shit actually allowed me to learn so much about energy and shit that you see
Stimulation.
Children's shit in there. Like, things I learned in children's episodes is that energy is fucking nuts,
Mm-hmm. It's weird tapping into a kid's psyche, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it was fun. I wrote really jokey back then. Like, a million jokes an hour was my thing. Like, every script. I have a script about 2 Boston girls that is probably it's like a joke grenade. Like, it just
Bam, bam, bam.
Yeah, it's like 30 Rock. Back then there were more shows like that. Where you had to be, have like 4 jokes per page.
I've been sitting in on the Big Mouth table reads for their 7th season, and it's very similar.
Yeah,
the way they're writing, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, it's that electric kind of volley.
Mm-hmm.
Bang, bang. It's like, it's table tennis. Anyway, so then finally, like, a few choices, like doing the kid shows and is he calling me?
We got 5 minutes. Okay.
Those kid shows and stuff like that kind of, like, I think hurt you because people are like, oh, these kid shows, we're not going to hire him on this, like, adult show. So that kind of hurt me, but I needed the money. It became very hard to get staffed, and I had 2 years where I didn't work. And
so what are you doing for 2 years?
Right, I writing and trying to save my life. I mean, there was a lot of tears and a lot of, like, wondering if we're taking our kids out of school, their school they go to, and if we're selling the house. It was bad. It was really darkest.
Well,
shit.
Hold up real quick, because this is very interesting to me. As an outsider, I think a lot of people expect people who are making stuff and producing stuff, they make one successful thing and can hold them over for 4 years. But it's not that way, right?
I wasn't developing at the time. I was writing specs and getting jobs, and I got a little too comfortable getting jobs. And then, so all of a sudden I'm like, I just gotta go for it and write.
How old are you?
Oh my God. Was this 2014 or something? It wasn't that long ago.
8
It was
years
right
ago.
before Wayne. When Wayne came out in 2018, 19? and
You gotta
made it in 18, started in 17, wrote it and started writing in 15 or 16. So yeah. So I wrote kind of like my wife always says, you wrote yourself out of a fucking hole, man. Like I wrote the craziest thing that felt me, that only could have come from me.
So this totally revitalized your career, this series.
Gave me a career. I never really considered me having one. It was so fucking spotty.
Holy shit.
It was like, it was so up and down. Like I might have worked for 3 years in a row one year, and then I'm not working a year, and then, you know, it's so hard staffing.
What's it like having money now?
I don't have money.
I know, but you have more now than you did when you weren't working.
I sold a movie, you know, that's different. Wayne has allowed me a lot of things. There are people like fans out there, like the 20th Century Fox guy working now, Steve Asbell, who is like turned out just to be the greatest. And greatest just letting artists be fucking artists and trying to find what special nugget is in there. He, you know, loved Wayne so much. And then I go into a meeting, I'm just, you know, one of those general meetings, and I'm like, hey, man, what's up? And he talks about Wayne for 10 minutes, and I'm so flattered. Smartest guy, like one of the smartest guys I've ever met. And then he's like, what you working on? And I'm like, I'm working on this female getaway car driver thing that's kind of like a 70s Cassavetes movie stuffed inside of a modern day kind of getaway car driver movie. And he's like, you know, and I gave him this opening scene like I told you I do. I came up with an opening scene about a girl who grew up, you know, driving her parents around at 13 years old because they were alcoholics. And she was like forced to drive them home from bars and shit, and became a getaway car driver because of the, you know, tragedy that was her life. And he's like, I'll take it. And that, you know, that doesn't happen.
That's the 20th Century Project.
Yeah, I talked for 4 minutes. And now, you know, here we are 7 months later, and I've turned it in, and it's a thing. It's a thing. Like, I got rewriting the little tiny notes he gave me, and but yeah, man, I'm telling you, like, I was on 8, 9, 10 shows, and I would not call what I had a career. I would call it me constantly trying to break in by having little
But
jobs.
you didn't fucking quit, man.
Well, you're
a stubborn bastard, Shawn.
I don't know how to do anything else. No, and nobody listens to the radio anymore. So my mother's idea of being on the radio because I'm ugly, you know, isn't gonna work out. Yeah, I don't know what else I'd do, honestly. It's like, you know, all I want to do is like
Create.
I don't know. Is there, you know, those people that like go to the hospital, volunteer holding babies? I like babies. I'll go hold babies, but they don't pay anything. But that's the only thing
Yeah, I think you're
I don't
better
like
off as a
much.
writer, man.
I'll see that. I'm gonna volunteer for that shit. Get fucking old babies.
We're gonna have to wrap up soon, but final question, and we'll do another episode at some time. I really enjoyed this. Thank you, man, so much.
Oh no, I'm all over the place. I'm sorry.
It's all right, I am too.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we made sense, man. honestly.
ADHD, man.
Dude, I was drinking like 200 milligrams of caffeine this whole episode. When you reflect on...
Wayne gave me a career. That's the last I'll say. Like, Wayne gave me a career.
That's what I'm saying, though. When you reflect and you see the way your career's maneuvered over the years, mind you, you're finally hitting a stride. Were you 48? 47? 49. Do you believe in destiny? Like, do you...
God, it sure feels like it in a lot of ways. I mean, listen, the one thing I kept doing was listening to like, oh, what's the market looking for? The fucking bum move, man. It's the wrong move because you're trying to write. And I still have this problem. People come to me with ideas and I'm like, I have to find my way in. And I also like, now I'm in the like luxurious position of, you know, that's not speaking to me. And if I'm not obsessed with it, I'm not going to get whatever magic you think it is that Wayne captured. The only times I've ever hit it in these last few things I've written since Wayne is because I wake up like, holy shit, I have to write that fucking thing.
I'm passionate as fuck, yeah.
And people bring me stuff and they're like, we think you could do this. And I'm like, I have to find, once in a while I do find it. But if I'm not going to come through with that magic for you, or I want to stop saying magic now. If I'm not coming through with that like special thing that makes me be able to write a script and feel great about it and be like crying, I was rewriting a script the other day and like tears coming down my eyes. If I don't get there, where I'm unnecessarily emotional about shit, you know, like I used to cry writing Wayne all the time. You know what I mean? Like if I don't get there,
It's
I
not
haven't
gonna
earned
be
my
good.
money. I'm not earning my money. You know, I know something's wrong. You know, writing's a weird thing where you feel like when you're laughing at ideas that come to your head, that's such a weird fucking thing that you feel like they came from somewhere else and went into your brain and you laugh. It's such a strange thing to me. Like someone, where did it come from? What delivery? Because I wasn't aware of it, and then I was aware of it, and it's you're laughing or you're crying or that's such a strange thing, and I just honestly have to get there or fucking go home. You know what I mean? I did it with Wayne, and I've luckily felt that way about the last. You know, I wrote that pilot for Endeavor Content, and I've written this movie, and I've written this other small movie that I want to direct, and I've gone through those emotional waves in ways where I'm like, okay, I'm feeling this in a way that I feel like it's a real thing. Yeah, Wayne allowed that. You know,
We gotta wrap it up, man.
it's funny. This is a live thing. It's like you guys just do it, cut it live, huh? You don't like go long and then cut it together, tighten it. You got to stay within the hour. It's like a live thing.
I know it's
Pretty
like
cool.
you gotta get it done. I'm actually getting a studio in Santa Monica in 8 weeks, where episode length will be 10 hours if necessary. So we can run another one.
Have you moved here?
I have.
Okay. All right.
I'm here. I'm in the snake pit, brother.
I don't know where you think you're going to get writers to drive to Santa Monica, but
Why does everyone live in Burbank?
nobody. That's the joke here. Is they're like, "Oh, you live on the left side? I'll see you in a year."
Okay, I didn't know that. All right, Gio, thank you, man. Shawn, appreciate it so much, man. And if you got, okay, you already clicked it.
No.
You did?
No, keep going.
Great guys unite live from Hollywood. We're gonna keep it going. All love, brother. Thank you, Shawn.